Hey, this is Peter Cunha, your New Jersey real estate giant, here, broker owner of Open Doors, and I'm sitting with Gerald Cioci Esquire. How you doing, Jerry?
Good, Pete. It's a pleasure to see you again.
Hey, so Jerry and I have quite a bit of a history. We used to be neighbors in Asbury Park. That's actually how we met. It's funny because thinking back about this, we didn't really talk about this before the call, but I wasn't in real estate when we met.
No,
Uh,
you were a Wall Street guy.
yeah, I was a Wall Street guy, and it's there's not many people that don't know me from prior to being a real estate agent.
Mhm.
I got to tell you, you were very fundamental to the growth in my business and just kind of introducing me to kind of the New Jersey kind of aspect of real estate. People kind of know my history a little bit, Wall Street background. I was in sales for a bit there, in the finance industry, et cetera. And, I wound up in real estate, recruited out of it a couple of times. But more importantly, when did you get your law degree? How did you get involved in real estate, et cetera?
Well, believe it or not, Pete, I got my law degree back in 1992. I've been practicing law since then. And real estate, really, I got more involved in real estate back in 2006, 2007, 2008. I always did some real estate, but I was primarily a trial lawyer. I did
Okay.
civil and criminal litigation. And it wore me out. It burned me out. And I decided to make a change. And when I made a change, I went to more of a transactional office practice where I primarily do real estate and bankruptcy now. So no more trial work, which is a good thing. And, focusing now on happy outcomes for people, which is basically buying and selling homes, which they're usually happy.
Yeah, and again, just because I know personally, the bankruptcy side, right?
Mhm.
It doesn't necessarily mean the end. We've kind of
Yeah.
gone after that a little bit before, where we're trying to help people before they actually get to the bankruptcy piece of it. So,
Yes.
like, what are some options? And this is what we were talking a little bit off camera. As far as bankruptcies, is that up or down? Like, what's your take on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm seeing now, I think, an increase in bankruptcy filings, and I think a lot of it is due now to the COVID-19 programs that were in place for folks being slowly going away, and inflation's hammering people, and especially senior citizens. Unfortunately, I had a conversation this morning with a woman who is in foreclosure now because
Oof.
between inflation and property tax increases, she's not able to make her mortgage payments. And the sad part about it is, we're going to try to avoid bankruptcy for her and try to get the house sold for her as opposed to going through bankruptcy or foreclosure. But that's the segment of the population right now who's being hit the hardest because they're on a fixed income. Inflation skyrocketed. It was 8.3% for August. I just saw a statistic somewhere, and their income can't keep up with that. So they're using credit cards as a means to bridge the gap. But as you know, that's not sustainable.
Right. Again, personally, like, I was helping my mother with something, and I had a
Mhm.
contractor over at her house, and she was talking about that as well, just property taxes. And then you had also mentioned something, what's utilities, which is, again, on a fixed income, there's a big jump coming up, or like what you mentioned
I
some.
just saw that the State Board of Public Utilities allowed rate increases for all the gas suppliers in New Jersey. And I think PSC&G got an increase of 24%, and
Wow.
the other ones are in the same neighborhood. It's just terrible. You're going to really see a pinch this winter in terms of home heating prices.
Okay, so let's just talk this out. And again, help me out to better understand this, right?
Sure.
So somebody, that's obviously retired, kind of not in
Mhm.
a position to make more income. And I see this all the time, right?
Yep.
With technology, jobs are just being kind of extinguished. They're not even, you don't need to do them anymore. Look at McDonald's, right? You can just punch up your own order. Here's
Yep.
a ticket, and then you just wait for your number to be called. And I think of, unfortunately, like the Walmart greeter, somebody that's making kind of minimum wage, but it's your mother and welcoming you home. And they're just, when they have to cut expenses, that's the first person to go, right? Because it doesn't really serve a purpose. Um,
Mhm.
So what options? All right. So you're in the worst case scenario. You're overextended. You mentioned credit card debt. It's getting out of control.
Yep.
People mentally are getting depressed about this. What options do they have? Like where? And again, I know that I can get them a cash offer. It's usually not the best offer,
Sure.
but it helps them out if they're in a pinch.
We
What?
have to try to identify for people, Pete, what their biggest cause of financial stress is. You have some folks, okay, maybe senior citizens or even younger folks who, unfortunately, they bought too much house
Okay.
and they bought the height of the market. The market is now declining, and now they realize they're saddled with a very large mortgage payment. So they either have to cut expenses somewhere else or sell the property. What we try to do is evaluate for them, where are you in this process? If I could get rid of all your credit card and medical expenses, get rid of all the unsecured debt, would that income that you have now keep you in your house? If it is, then bankruptcy is probably the best option for them. Get rid of all the unsecured debt if they qualify, get rid of their medical debt, and then they could focus on making their mortgage payments or their necessity payments, food, clothing, shelter. If it's not just that, if they can't make the mortgage or tax payments on the property, then we got to talk about selling the house. And that's a painful and personal decision because nobody wants to feel like they're being forced out of their home. But at the end of the day, leaving on your own terms and pocketing your equity is better than having a bank and an investor take the property through foreclosure and take equity away from you.
Right. And it's funny that you mentioned that because I'm a trusted Dave Ramsey advisor.
Mhm.
And the whole thing is, I know it's conservative to a lot of people, but being out of debt, it gives you a lot of freedom.
Mhm.
So, I look at this and, what I hear is a lot of downsizing kind of scenarios, right? We could sell your house, we could get you an offer, we could potentially find you a house that you could buy in all cash if you have enough equity. But say that's not the case, and you're dealing with foreclosure. What's the risk? How does that ding you going forward? Because the
The
difference
problem
between
with foreclosure for most people, Pete,
yeah,
is this. Number one, until that foreclosure judgment is perfected, you have a ding on your credit every month from your mortgage lender who's reporting you as delinquent. That destroys your credit. The
right,
second problem you have is that if the property goes into foreclosure, you're going to lose any equity you have in that property. Now, they say, yes, by law, if they sell it for more than what the mortgage amount and the liens are, they could get that money back to the seller, but very rarely does it happen. Most properties are bought for the amount of the mortgage from the lender itself themselves. So
right,
you're not going to see the appreciation of that equity back in your pocket. And finally, if you go into foreclosure, they have a judgment that's good against you for 20 years. Now, most lenders don't go after you for the deficiency judgment, but if you owed $300,000, they sold the house at auction for $200,000, you have $100,000 worth of liability to a lender that goes on your credit report and on your record that's good for 20 years.
ouch,
So you have some major consequences of allowing the property to go into foreclosure. I try to tell people you always want to look at your other options, whether it be filing a Chapter 13 bankruptcy and trying to get the property sold before foreclosure, or trying to get a payment plan to make up your arrears, a short sale of the property, which Pete, I know you're very familiar with, you're very good at that. Sometimes a deed in lieu of foreclosure. There's a lot of different options, that you have, but the most important thing is not to wait. People find themselves in trouble when they wait too long. And the client I was telling you about this morning, she called me after they filed for foreclosure and they've got a judgment against her now. Now she wants to do something. It's always better to start that process when you first get into trouble, because hope in this situation is not a strategy.
yeah. And you and I have been down the rabbit hole a few times where
Mhm.
I got to sell my house. It's going into foreclosure. You have 30 days to do it.
Mhm.
It's like, are you kidding me? And we can make it happen. We have a lot more tools available to us than we did 10 years ago, but
Yeah.
it's why put yourself in that, put yourself in that position, and it's funny because every time I hear it, and I don't hear a lot of people that are struggling, but I'm like, call Jerry, see what your options are. And, it's by by all means, we don't just do bankruptcy. We do regular real estate transactions,
Yes.
which is, what did you call them? Happy
Yeah.
transactions?
And that's what I love. I love the regular real estate transactions where people are happy to sell and happy to buy.
Right.
That's the ones we work on.
Yeah, and if you're watching this video, please subscribe and send us some happy clients. We'd love to
Mhm.
help. But yeah, there's a couple of other things that you and I have been talking a lot. You've been working on getting a real estate. Before I even start with the instructor piece of this, what I always thought was interesting about you is you see it from the realtor side because you actually have a real estate license. Is that
That's
correct?
correct. I wanted to better understand, real estate from the practitioner's side of it. And I thought the best way to do that was to get a real estate license myself. I don't use the license. The license is not hanging in any office. It's with the state, but I went through the course. I took the exam. I passed it,
Sure.
and I was able to experience what you folks as realtors go through and the amount of work you put on your transactions. So I'm sensitive to both sides of it. A lot of lawyers, unfortunately, don't appreciate how hard you work. Then you make a phone call, you show a house, and you get paid, your commission. It's not like that at all. It's a much more uh, difficult process to get the file from when you first interview the client to get into closing for you guys. I appreciate that. And that's why I work hard with you guys to make the deals go through. As I told as I don't get paid unless the deal closes. I don't charge the clients a retainer. I have a retainer agreement, obviously, but I tell them if we don't close, I don't charge you. So I'm in the business of trying to get the deals closed if I can, and that's in the client's best interest. But I also understand that not every deal can close. And I don't want to penalize the client for that because not everybody can afford that.
Right. And yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, I was talking to one of my agents today, and the buyer literally wants to delay the closing until the 15th of next month because they don't want to pay interest payments ahead of time or
Mhm.
paid interest payments for the 14 days. And I was like, well, what are we really talking about? She's like, probably like 200 to 300 bucks. And obviously it's the clients, that they can do whatever they want, but they don't think about it takes time to move into a house. It's not just you move in, it's moving day and everything's, the beds are made, the TVs are hanging on the walls and stuff like that. So, I always think that for, when you're making such a big investment, that little things on the overall scale of things are driving forces, let's say. Because God knows anything could change in 2 weeks. I've
Yeah.
seen I've seen it where people are like, "Ah, my boss just told me not to buy the house because guess what? I might not have a job in 2 weeks."
That's really a very important point that you raised because we don't always know the client situation like that. Sometimes they don't always tell us. We have to ferret that out and find out if that's going to be an issue or not. Because if it is, then we have to take provisions to protect that client and say, we'll give you extended time to make a decision on this. We'll give you an extended contingency period for your mortgage, whatever it might be. If you know at the end of the month there's going to be cutbacks at your company, you're not sure you're going to be one of them, it's probably better to just to wait and see where you are at that point before you commit to something like this. Sure.
Right. Yeah, and you know what I always find interesting is I consider my client a really good salesperson. He just
Mhm.
happened to be been with the same company for 7 years. It's like I know I'm having a tough time finding quality people to work uh,
Yep.
on the level that I need them to, and I'm like, you shouldn't have a hard time finding a job. It's just kind of, again, change for people that have been in the same kind of routine for a very long time. Find it difficult.
Hardest part, for us sometimes is accepting that change. We're changing, the economy changing right now. So we're going to have to, retrace our steps, re-entrench in terms of what we need to do for our businesses because during COVID, business was very good. And, there was a lot of, deals where we said no contingencies, no inspections, just, highest
Right.
amount of money you could come up with, do it. That was a seller's market. Now we're going back to a buyer's market where, we have to change our strategy to make sure those deals are completed in a different manner now.
Yeah, it's funny. I posted a quote this morning that I heard where success is learning from a series of failures.
Mhm.
And it's just kind of like, people are always, what's going to happen. And I was at this funeral. I bumped into one of my clients who the wife didn't want to sell the house,
Yep.
but they had to make a financial decision. And I said, how's she doing? And he literally said to me, he goes, she said to me the other day at dinner, had I known how happy the kids would have been, I would have sold that house years ago. I was like, imagine how that worked out, like
Yeah.
he went from villain to hero in like literally 30 days.
Yep.
So, you're afraid of the unknown is what I like to think of.
Yeah. People are afraid of change and they're afraid of the unknown, but sometimes that could be the best blessing you'll get is having that change.
Right. So, Jerry, we've been talking. Listen, I call these fireside chats, but let's talk about some stuff that's not so business oriented. How's Rutgers football? I know you're a huge fan. How are they doing?
Yes, I'm a 40-year fan, season ticket holder, and they are 2-0 this season, and they should
What?
be 3-0 after Saturday. Yeah.
Who are they playing? I was asking you
They
who.
beat Boston College. They beat Wagner last week, and this week they're playing Temple down in Philadelphia.
Okay, so what's their project? I know that I'm a big Rutgers fan. I don't have any connection to the school in any way, but I had some roommates that played there. It was I don't want to mention his name, but it was the one team when they were in the top five, maybe top 10.
Yeah,
Yeah,
2006.
yeah. Who's the running back from that year?
That was Ray Rice.
Ray White. Go Ray Weiss,
Mhm.
and then they were incredible. Are now that they've moved to what is it, the Big Ten? What do they call the Big
In
Ten
the
now?
Big Ten, yep, tough conference.
All right, so what's their projected? What's the when do they get into the meat of
If
the
they go 6-6 this year, it'll be ecstatic.
All
They're
right,
a young team rebuilding, but if they can win 3 games in conference and go to a bowl, that'd be a good year for them.
all right, and I like to think of you as a Renaissance man, right? Like most people, I could be like, hey, listen, who's your favorite sport team? This and that, they list everything. I'm like, we were talking about the last concert that you went to. Go for it, shoot it.
Last concert I went to, believe it or not, was in 2000. It was 2018 or 19. It was before COVID. It was in Atlantic City at the Hard Rock. We saw the Counting Crows and live at the arena at the Hard Rock.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I've seen the Counting Crows a number of times. In fact, I saw them, here in New Jersey a few times, and at the Arts Center. I saw them once in Las Vegas, and an outdoor venue. They put on a good show.
Favorite song?
Oh, that'd have to be "Murder of One."
Let's hear it.
I'm not singing for you. I try to draw the line somewhere, brother.
All right. No, fair enough. And the reason why I said you're a Renaissance man is like, we were just kind of going through some interests that you're involved in. It's cooking. What's your favorite dish to make?
My favorite dish to make is probably, I would tell you, Thanksgiving dinner. I do 13 dishes on Thanksgiving, including the turkey where I brine it. And I love doing all the sides. The only thing I don't do are the desserts. I do
Okay.
everything from the turkey to the bread to the all the side dishes. And the only thing I won't do is the dessert. No baking for me.
That's fantastic. All right. So, and again, I love putting people on the spot, right? So this is the way I did. And look at you, you're cringing already.
Yes.
What's the one book that you've given or recommended, or to the most amount of people in your lifetime?
The one book I've given or recommended the most amount of people in my lifetime.
The Bible's up there.
The Bible is always a good one to go fall back upon. But if we're talking about non-sectarian, non-religious, I probably have to say, Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, only because the lessons that you learn from that book transcend any part of your life, whether it be social, whether it be, charitable, whether it be professional. It's really a great book in terms of, learning how to build relationships with people, because at the end of the day, what we do is all about relationships.
Right. No, and I think that that's so much important. Like, here's another one that I heard this week. And if you're not already on it, the 5 a.m. club.
Mhm.
It was somebody said on one of the calls this week, it was people don't remember what you said or what you did, but they'll always remember how you made them feel.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it was, and again, tying into that whole relationship theme, I think it's just a wonderful way to live, right? We have choices that we make. We can get triggered by whatever it is. I was actually telling one of my colleagues before the call, I was like, we're on the same path. We're doing the same things. And it's like, what's going to motivate you to do the things that you're saying, right? And typically fear is one of them. So I said, all right, let's just give $100 donation to a charity. And listen, we are on the opposite side of the political spectrum. So I said, I'll donate $100. You get to pick the charity, knowing that I'm going to be really against it, and vice versa. And she's like, game on, So we're, it's funny that we're talking about relationships and how we get things done, but we kind of tie in all these little things. So, Jerry, before I let you go, buddy,
Yes.
how do people get in touch with you?
Oh, my best way to reach me is probably through email or ciocilaw@gmail.com.
Right.
Or you call my office, 732-508-5028, or they can call Pete and Pete will put you in touch with me.
Yeah, and I'll post all the contact information. This will be on YouTube, just so you know, and all my other social media is out there. And Jerry, listen, you've been, somewhat of a mentor, especially early on in my career, just, getting me to at least thinking bigger and saying, again, I appreciate you having a real estate license because the challenges of what real
Yeah.
estate is, and it's not necessarily the easiest thing. I've grown a lot since I first got into real estate, where, we're mentoring, we're training, we're coaching. And it's fun and exciting when people finally start getting it. So, again, Jerry, thank you for your time. Thank you for being such a positive person in my life, and looking forward to
I
doing this.
value your friendship, Peter. I want to thank you for having me on this afternoon.
All right, buddy.
Okay. Thank you.